My name is Bob, call sign W06W. While not an employee of the Begali factory, I have become friends with the family and really enjoy using a number of their different keys. The sculpture arrow is fairly unique in the way that it's set up. I've made this video to explain how the key operates, what makes it different, and how it can be adjusted. I hope you find this material useful. Thank you. The Begali sculpture arrow is one of my favorite straight keys. It has a buttery smooth feel when keying. It is stable on the desk and makes very little noise. Truly a wonderful straight key. It's also unique. It has two magnets that are used to set the keying force. One set of the magnets operates by pulling up on the front of the key. The second set of magnets operates by pushing down on the back, and these two controls interact. When they are set in balance, the key has a near uniform keying force as the knob travels from full up to full down. That setting is challenging to set if you don't have a procedure to make the adjustments. What I present in the following video is a description of what the keying force looks like graphically and a procedure for adjusting the key for that near uniform keying force through travel. The key comes from the factory, adjusted by Piero Begali for a very usable keying force and a nice contact gap. You can adjust those to your taste purely by feel. If you're interested in achieving the uniform keying force that I show in just a moment, the procedure that follows will allow you to do that with excellent repeatability and no special tools. This is the force displacement curve for a Begali spark key. With the spark, this is travel of the key down toward contact closure. This is the amount of force that the user applies. At the beginning of this curve, the user starts pressing down on the knob, the force rises, but the key doesn't move very far at all. Eventually, the force down is matching the resisting force of the spring, and the knob really begins to travel toward contact closure. At this point, the force rises rapidly because the contacts have come closed. There's no more room for the knob to move. Note that the force increases uniformly as the key travels down toward contact closure. The sculpture arrow is a unique key in that it uses two magnets, and with those two magnets, one magnet dominates while the key is up, the other magnet dominates when the key is down, and in the middle they can pretty much balance each other out. The result is that the user presses down on the knob, force increases with almost no movement of the key, and then the key starts to travel toward contact closure. But the force can be set to remain virtually constant all the way through that travel until this point where the contacts close and the force rises sharply. If the contact gap is closed, bringing this knee in the curve closer to the rest position of the key, it simply moves this sharp upturn closer to the rest position. The key travels a much shorter distance, the contacts close, and the force rises sharply. In the example that follows, we're going to be taking an arrow and we're going to set it for a uniform 100-gram keying force with a very, very large travel of the key. So the key will go a long way up and down between contacts open and contacts close. Once the key has been set for this uniform force, we'll close the contact gap to a more normal operating range. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate setting the keying force of a Begali sculpture arrow straight key. To run this procedure, I need a stack that has the desired weight for my keying force, in my case 100 grams, your case may vary. In the US, a nickel weighs 5 grams, and if you'll notice, the scale is jumping back and forth between 100 and 101 grams with this stack of 20 nickels. 100 to 101 grams, more than accurate enough for the purpose. You may find that a stack of washers or a stack of coins of a different denomination that you have in your home country will work for you. The important thing is that it weigh pretty much what you select as your keying force, and that the weights sit comfortably on the knob of the key without falling off. Prior to adjusting the keying force, please make sure that the knob height is at or near the factory setting. The factory setting has the bottom of the key arm close to the knob at about 11 millimeters above the desktop. About 11 millimeters, give or take a millimeter. If the knob has been moved far from this setting, you'll want to readjust the knob height to that 11 millimeters. The screw on the back of the key is used to adjust the knob height. Turning clockwise on the screw will raise the back of the key and lower the front. When making this adjustment, it may be necessary to back out the contact gap screw to allow the key to move freely into the position needed. The first step in this procedure is to set the key travel, the amount that the knob travels up and down, to a relatively large space, 3 millimeters, 1/8 of an inch, large enough that it's easy to see that movement. If you look at the key right now, it's not traveling very far. So I'm going to back off on the contact spacing, the contact gap, which is the screw farthest from the user. Backing that off about a half a turn, maybe a little bit more. And there's a nice amount of travel, and that was about a half a turn backed off on the contact gap. The distance you back off for your key will vary. You just want this gap to be fairly large so that you can work with it. The next thing that I'm going to do, my key happens to be set for 100 grams. I'm going to back off the two magnets just to make sure that I get to demonstrate something changing. So I've backed one off, I put the other one in closer. Doesn't really matter, I just wanted to set the key force different than my target. And if you notice, the key magnets, this back magnet farthest from the knob, there is some space between the coils of the spring. It's not all the way down tight. Same for the spring in front. This front spring acts in attraction. This magnet on the end of the screw and a magnet on the arm of the key are attracting. So as I bring this screw in clockwise, turning it clockwise, I'm reducing the distance between the magnet on the screw and the magnet on the key, increasing the force pulling the key up. So for this screw, clockwise brings the force higher. This is the pivot of the key, roughly in here. So the key is pivoting about a bearing in the middle. This front set of magnets is acting in attraction on the top of the key. This back set of magnets is acting in repulsion. So as I bring this screw in closer to the body of the key, clockwise, closer to the body of the key, I'm bringing this rear magnet closer to a magnet on the arm, and that's repelling. It's pushing the back of the key down, pushing the front of the key up. So for both of these magnets, clockwise increases the force required to push down on the knob. Closing in here, magnets closer in attraction, pulling up on the front of the key, pulling up. This magnet in repulsion on a magnet on the back of the arm, pushing the back of the arm down, forcing the knob up. Clockwise, closer to the body of the key, increased keying force. And again, I've adjusted these so that the force is not the target 100 grams, and I've backed off on the contact gap so that I have about 3 millimeters of travel at the front of the key. And you can measure that any number of ways. If you're not comfortable with the notion of 3 millimeters by eye or 1/8 of an inch, you can put a ruler next to the front of the key and just look at how far it's traveling. Look at how this changes on the scale. I'm now going to set the keying force. I have my measured test weight, and I'm going to set the key so that at knob up, it just holds the weight of the coins, and it falls. So I need more traction up to hold the knob high. Going to increase it a bit. And I'm looking to overshoot, so I'm going to keep adding force up until the key holds the weight. And that might take a moderate amount of adjustment. Okay. The key now has enough up force to hold the coins. If it had sufficient up force at the very beginning, I would have first placed the weights on the knob and they would have stayed up. We're now at that point where the knob is supporting the weight of the coins. And I'll back off on the attraction at the top slowly until the coins just fall. There we are. Now I want to increase the repulsion at the bottom, pushing down on the back of the knob to cause the coins to rise. So I'm going to start turning in on that back screw, and I'm looking for the coins to rise. There we are. They just started to rise. And in fact, they're very nearly balanced. Not going to get any better than that. The key doesn't have a strong inclination to go up or down. If you find that the knob is not floating or near floating after you've adjusted the front and rear magnets, you may want to repeat this adjustment once or twice more. Typically, the first or second time will be all that's required. Our final step in preparing the sculpture arrow for use is to set the contact gap. During this adjustment procedure, we've had the gap set quite wide, wider than I'd want to use it. I'm now going to close the contact gap, screwing in clockwise on the contact gap screw at the back until the gap feels good to my hand. I like that feel, and setup is complete. Should you need to clean the contacts on your sculpture arrow, they can be reached through this window at the back of the key. The contact gap screw presses down on this cantilevered beam, which carries the top contact from the key. When you go key down, rear contact mounted to the arm of the key comes up from below, touching that top adjustable contact. To clean the contacts, you may want to back out on the contact gap to create a little more space. You can then slide a strip of clean white printer paper between the contacts, hold the contacts closed on the paper, slide it free of the key, repeat 2 or 3 times as necessary. Many thanks for watching. I hope this video has been useful, and please do enjoy your key.